Mr Speaker.
Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, I'd have to say 12 on Monday was quite a moment. I woke up to hearing our daughter yelling out down the house, and I said, well, you know, just stay there. And actually lying in bed was a pretty good way to respond to it, I thought. But anyway, that started what's been quite a surreal period. And I'd like to start by acknowledging one of the first people to send me a text was Reno Tirakatne, and I'd like to thank him for that. I do support him in things such as JP nominations and so on between ourselves, so we do work quite well together. But it's not stopped at Reno. There's been much support coming from right across the House, and I'd like to acknowledge that. It's fantastic. However, I'm not the person that needs the support. It's the people who are affected by the earthquake. And once I got out of bed, when it finally stopped rocking, I headed down to the Civil Defence Emergency Headquarters Centre in Marlborough. And I have to say, you know, you go right back to the 2000 Boxing Day fires, and the response was not that great in Marlborough. It led to a complete review of how the things were being operated, and Richard McNamara, who's the chief there, is doing a fantastic job. He's internationally renowned. The systems they have in place, I think, are laudable, and they had a very swift response. And of course, we didn't know at that stage what the situation was further down. Once I learned what had happened in Kaikoura, I decided to drive down there, but I thought I'd go as far as I could. I spoke to the Mayor of Kaikoura, who incidentally, they had a council retreat at Sanana, and when I spoke to him a bit after 1 o'clock in the morning, they were making their way through Blenheim on their way back to Kaikoura. And so I said, text me when you know what the road conditions are. Nothing came through. I figured it couldn't have been that good, so I waited until I timed my run so I'd be on the coast at first light. And I stopped at Seddon, came across the community, sitting around, people sleeping on the wooden deck outside the school. They'd made the right decision. Their houses they had assessed as being dangerous, and they did what I think was very sensible. They gathered together in a place they knew was safe and sheltered there. And it was great to talk to them. I went on to Ward, talked to the people in Ward and who had done something similar, and went as far as I could, past the police barricade, and the policeman smiled to me and saying, well, it's against police advice, but, you know, more or less, away you go. So I went down the road as far as I could, and I got to the end. I thought, well, this is really going to take some fixing, but it wasn't until a very kind Alan Wilkinson offered me his helicopter, and so I flew down there yesterday in a Hughes 500, and the pilot told me, well, that's as bad as it gets. It was pretty rough when we got down there, but to see the damage along the road, it's, I thought I'd had a good handle on it on the way down. On the way back, it really hit me how big a task it is going to be to fix that. But we must fix it. It's part of the vital lifeline of New Zealand, and it's a part of Kaikoura's absolute economic survival. So we must fix it. It reminds me that the Douglas Cliffords, they set up the farm which was New Zealand's biggest farm in Flaxbourne, and they built a wharf on the Flaxbourne River. This is in the early or mid-1800s. In 1848, I think I stand to be corrected on the year, but there was a massive earthquake which uplifted the coast, much as has happened today. And that wharf was left high and dry. The river was no longer navigable. So that sort of prompted their shift down to Stonyhurst in Canterbury, where they set up a similar operation with a wharf out on the coast to trade with Christchurch, which was emerging as a town at that time, rather than Wellington, which they were going to do from Flaxbourne. The people of Kaikoura, look, we've been down, there's been much said about that today, but I've been there twice now in the last 2 days. Tomorrow, I am going to North Canterbury. I'm flying down there. Someone's driving my car to Christchurch as we speak, and I'll be driving up into Hamner Springs, Rotherham, Culverden, Waiau, and Cheviot, and try to get around as much of the area as possible over the next 2 days. Those people who are most isolated are often the worst affected and the most difficult to get at, but we will do our best to do as much as we can over the next few days. So our thoughts and my thoughts and sympathies go to the people's families who lost their lives and to all those that are injured. But thank you, Mr. Speaker.